Be wonderful. So there we go. And we are welcoming everyone to Zoom call number 2 on our New and Emerging Leaders programme, Spring 24. So what we're about today is consolidating and all these touch points and the online. It's so that the programme isn't a one-hit wonder. What we really want you to do is take on board the learning we're sharing and the experiencing your peers are sharing with you too. Reflect on it, give things a go, learn how it works for you, improve those things, share your experiences on an ongoing basis throughout the programme. So today is one of those opportunities for us to help consolidate everyone's learning around what we've already covered. So we'll have a quick run round on the 4 main topics that were on the workshop. So on workshop 1, we did the fabulous development model. We did the ultimate success formula. We looked at your personal values in your career or role. And we also had a fun play with credibility and approachability, looking at the cats and dogs model. So subsequent to that, of course, we've had the 360.
And we'll spend a little bit of time today just giving an overview from our perspective of the group, just giving you some kind of thoughts of ours in terms of the 360. And finally, if we've some time today, we're going to introduce a new topic to you, which we think you'll find fascinating. And again, it's one of these topics which will help you understand yourself better and your motivations particularly. It will help you understand other people and will show you how you can adapt your leadership style to best effect with the wide range of people that you'll be working with. So time permitting, we'll put some of that in today as a new topic.
Excellent. So at any point, if you have any questions, raise a hand, unmic and shout at us. Otherwise, we'll carry on quite a pace so we can get to the new topic as well. So first and foremost, just to remind you of a key topics we covered, which was the levels of development model. And that's the pyramid, or however else you affectionately want to talk about it, where we looked at a pyramid that is the system of you as an individual. Our focus on workshop 1 was about you as an individual and as a leader. And we will use that same model moving forward as we look at strategic development of an organization as well. But hopefully you're all getting familiar and got familiar with this particular model, remembering that the critical places for making changes, or in long-term changes, if you want a change to happen, is around the beliefs and values level. Any changes at the higher level will impact below and will incline us to have a much greater alignment, remembering that any changes in those top tiers of the pyramid tend to be more stable. But when we look at behaviours and capabilities, behaviours, we said, are built for flexibility. We're not changing the person when we flex our behaviour. We can be who we are and flex our behaviour to get us the results that we're looking for. And so what we're aiming for is a system that's efficient and effective because it's well aligned from top to bottom. And that also gives us our authenticity, our congruence, our stability in who we are, our personal integrity. So with that whistle top, did I leave anything out, Kevin?
No, I think you covered all that very well.
So what we'd like to know, I trust that you all, we were looking at one at a time, Kevin, were we?
Yeah.
Yes. So just a couple of people, we really do want to hear from people, and so do your peers on the call, in terms of the so what. I mean, people engaged with the model on the online, we're hearing good things about how useful it may be. Perhaps someone can share what something that touched them personally, because we were concentrating as you as a leader on the first workshop in relation to this pyramid. How did it help you? Is there something that you noticed that you hadn't before as a result of knowing and understanding more about this model? Something you learned about yourself? Well, you learned nothing.
It made me realise that I hadn't been particularly, I don't know, intentional about working out what my colleagues, what was underlying their behaviours, like what were their core beliefs. And I think it's quite easy if you work already, as we all do, in purpose-driven organisations, to sort of assume that everyone's coming at it from the same angle. So it led me to ask people more explicitly what it was that was underlying them.
Excellent. And of course, that assumption we might make is not that they're just coming from the same level, but they're coming from our level. You know, we tend to use our self-perception and how we think about things and how passionate we are about things, and make the judgments about others according to that. So that's useful. Anyone else, or any other observation about the model and your exposure to it, or you're playing with it, or you're experimenting with it?
I think there's a, I keep thinking about this like conflict between the idea of behaviors indicating people's values, but then flexing your behaviors to suit a situation or a person, and whether or not that, where's the point where that creeps into compromising the reflection of your values. So I see myself as a very honest, heart on my sleeve kind of person, but that honesty can sometimes mean that you kind of see too much of my emotions. So if I kind of mask that, am I still being true to being me to make other, but I'm making other people happy doing it? I'm feeling really conflicted about how much it should be the authentic me and the me that makes everyone feel happier. Is that selfish?
It's such a great question, Sarah, and it's one that in some ways takes a lifetime to answer. What we would emphasize, I think, as we did on the first workshop, is that where it is very useful to have flexibility is at that behavioral level, and obviously in terms of capabilities as well. It's always, I think, a personal judgment in how far do you stretch your personal values to accommodate somebody else. You know, there's no easy answer to that. I think a lot of that comes with experience, and yeah, and it's about personal boundaries at the end of the day. There will be certain things for you to maintain that alignment that we're talking about. There will be things that you will not compromise on, and that's absolutely right and proper. But maybe there is I'm thinking out loud here, but maybe there is also a call to say there is a challenge to oneself to ask, could I be more flexible? Do I really need to stick rigidly to these values and beliefs, or can I be a little bit more flexible? Maybe that's a challenge to oneself at times. I think there can be a problem if one is sticking too rigidly to one's beliefs and values, to the exclusion of other possibilities.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's not a simple one to answer, because that has been going around in my head.
Yeah.
I think
just a final thing to add. I think, and this is one thing where we did say on workshop one, that if you go against your personal values, that can't be sustained. You know, you will always get that metaphorical nudge in the ribs telling you this is not fundamentally right for you. So, you know, I think, yes, question, challenge, a little bit of flexibility. However, your system will always pull you back to that alignment.
And I was just going to add one little thing that jumped up for me when I was listening to that discussion was it's also about the intention behind the behavior. It's that your intention is congruent to your values. So whether I'm dancing or walking to fit in with other people, if my intention is to fit in with other people, that would somehow come out more congruent. That's all. You know, there's still all that big question about balance and choices and flexibility, but sometimes when we do a behavioral change that reflects for our intentions pure, you know, I might do some mirroring of someone to build rapport, but the intention is to build rapport so we can have a better relationship. So I'm physically mirroring, and it might not be so instinctive because we haven't quite been getting on the way we wanted to, but my intention is so congruent for me that I really want to have good communications with this person, that I think I still, you know, it's still congruent, it's still okay. Does that make sense? Still okay for me. Yeah.
And sorry, Rick, just one other thing, which I think is important. It's quite often what people are looking for is to have their values acknowledged. That doesn't mean to say you're agreeing with them, but as long as you're acknowledging them, I think that's a really important step in building that relationship.
Excellent.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
Ultimate success formula.
Oh, there's bound to be some fabulous examples here.
So if you remember this 5-step model that we said has multiple uses: know your outcome, know your reasons, take massive action, keep checking on, is that massive action getting you towards your outcome, which is know what you're getting, and if it isn't, change your approach. And then the two things that we added on in terms of key skills to develop are managing your own mood state and managing your relationship with others, which we're calling rapport.
Okay, so again, it's open floor and inviting you to share with us or comment or an observation. And perhaps in this one, perhaps you noticed one step that you hadn't been focusing on, that it drew your attention back to, that reminded you of an important step in this sensible process. What experience have you had? And this one, it may be using it with yourself, it may be using it with your team. You may have had a meeting and used it as the structure. Who would like to share something?
I'll go.
Amy?
That diagram came at quite a time, very timely for me, because I was having to go through a difficult conversation in order to get an outcome. And that outcome was, I suppose, the massive action. The bits which I think haven't worked so well, and that's a learning for me, is the rapport side of things, and the communication, the conversation that I had with that person wasn't interpreted in the way that I intended it. So there's something there that if I had the chance, then I would have gone back around that loop and adjusted my approach. But I still got to the end, I still got my desired outcome, and I did take that massive action. It just wasn't interpreted in the way that I'd hoped.
Excellent. Sounds like a very useful learning as well, the fact that you reflected on it and thought, well, actually, this is what I'd do differently next time. You know, that's very, very powerful. Good. Has anyone else utilised it? Again, we said it's not rocket science. However, putting it into practice may be a different matter altogether.
Yeah, we're looking at something similar at the moment. I'm looking at a bit of a restructure. And so I found it helpful for me because I think partly been a bit hesitant just to get on and start planning, because I know it's not or some of the decisions won't be popular. So, you know, but it's really helped me focus on, you know, this is the outcome I want, and this is why I'm doing it. And I know I've got to take this massive action, otherwise I'm not going to get that outcome. And I think it's almost just, I kind of know that, but just plotting it out and being clear in my mind why is helping motivate me to do what I need to do. Because I need to do it, but I'm procrastinating because I'm worried about the fallout, which is
So the model sort of helps you stick with it and avoids the distraction.
And sort of, you know, it's affirming what you already know, but that's quite useful because I know it's the right thing to do, but that doubt can creep in and is setting me off track. But actually just realigning myself and focusing back on my outcome, these are the reasons, then it's sort of affirming what I need to do.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, it's certainly very useful in that sense. And to be thinking about the outcome, you know, what it will be like when I have it, is a very powerful technique in its own right, rather than talking about it very broadly, to say, by the end of this meeting, we will have agreed such and such. It's a very useful way of framing that too. Okay. All right.
Kirsty has a point on this one as well.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually realised looking back over my career, I've been really focused on that. I've done a lot of project management and project and delivery based work, and it really focuses you on those processes. But one of the things that's interesting when you're working in-house and you're in a leadership role is it can actually be a really useful tool for putting the work back on other people. So it's not always your responsibility to make sure these things are happening. And I think sometimes people can take a lot of that on. And so I've often used that strategy in meetings with other people to say, so can you tell me why we're doing that? It's amazing how often people can't respond to you. And I think when you're in a leadership role, it's sometimes good to bounce those things back to your managers. Because sometimes they just are in the process of doing things without stopping to ask why, to think about alternative things. It's just the way things are always done. And I think we're now in a time where a lot of us are going through cycles of cost cutting and redundancies, and it really focuses attention, and it compresses timescales. And I think some people then find that such a shock when things start to happen quickly, because they haven't practiced these project management skills as part of their day-to-day working life. And I can usually tell someone who's worked in project management, who's worked in that way, and someone who hasn't, because often when they're confronted with things that happen quickly, they're the people who struggle.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsty. All very good points. Okay, no one else had their hand up? Champing at the bit to tell us anything, so we'll move on to, what's it, the third topic of the day, was it?
We will indeed, which was our wonderful cats and dogs model from Michael Grinder. And this was about learning particular ways of presenting oneself to enhance and increase the perception that one is credible or approachable, or both, if you use the right things at the right times. Again, talking to a couple of you in the one-to-ones with the 360s, it would seem that you're already putting this into practice. Some of you at work, some of you at home. So it's great to hear that, you know, it's making a difference to you already.
Okay, and again, we're opening to sharing. Now, someone told us a wonderful one, someone I was talking to. Who was it who used it with their daughter? Who, if you're willing to share, who was that? It was a really good one.
Charlotte's smiling.
Yeah, but she might not want to share, and now I've put a spotlight on her. Sorry about that, Charlotte.
On my family life. So I'm at the stage where I have quite a stroppy teenager. I'm sure some people might relate to this. who loves nothing more than to deliberately wind up and provoke an argument, particularly with their dad at the dinner table. And it was honestly, it was something nothing. This girl could have an argument in an empty room, and off she goes. You know, she's all fired up, and I could see the tensions getting, you know, ratcheting up, and my husband's getting all irate. And so I thought, right, we just need a little bit of cat in this moment. So I sat up and put my hands out and lowered my voice, and it just completely diffused the situation. She completely sort of dialed it back, and you know, it all was okay. And off she went. And my husband looked at me and he went, "What did you just do?" Like it was some sort of witchcraft. He said that you were completely different. I said, well, it just works, so let's just go with it. But it absolutely worked. She completely changed how she was behaving. She just got out of that cycle. Whereas normally what would happen is obviously everyone would start, you know, it just escalate and escalate until she jumps up and stormed off and slammed the door. She does a mean line in slamming doors as well.
Yeah.
Just like in the office then, is it?
yeah. It's just like a day-to-day in the office, really.
Excellent. Well, that was like an immediate, you used it very swiftly, I think, after the workshop, that one, didn't you?
But I must admit, even I was impressed by how it absolutely, I mean, joking aside, it really did completely diffuse the situation and just brought it all back down to a much more manageable level. So I was surprised. It was the first time I thought, well, I'll have a little practice. And it really did. I was surprised how effective it was.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you for sharing.
Just one other observation on that, Charlotte, in terms of why it works so well, and I think this is useful for all of you to reflect on, is that what happens with some of your relationships in the workplace as well as at home, they can be in patterns. So, you know, I guess you're recognizing that some individuals who you are interacting with, you kind of almost know how it's going to work out before it starts. And it's because it's like a bit of a dance that you both get into. You both know the steps. You know how, you know, I do this, she says that, he says this, blah, blah, blah. Now, what can help you in those situations is doing something dramatically different that takes the other person by surprise. So I think that's another reason it sounds like, you know, Charlotte's intervention was so stunningly successful. So it's almost like doing anything to break the pattern helps. And if you do something as powerful as going into cat, it's really going to have an impact. So well done, Charlotte.
Indeed. Anyone else want to share?
I'm pleased to have as much. Oh, sorry, Michael, you go ahead.
I'll be quick. Yeah, no, I had to do a bit of, it was kind of a preempt to a formal warning. So quite an intense meeting, but I tried to just stay very calm, ask open questions rather than going in with a full bollocking. Open questions. Tell me why you've done this. You know, did you understand it? Blah blah blah. And then very much finished with the hands down cat of, I do not want to see X, Y, Z. These are the actions. Let's move on.
Keeping it and keeping the observation at that behavioural level as well. If I could just add one thing, if Simon, if you can still keep remembering your input, I'm sure you will. It's come up a couple of times on this call now, and it's the why word. Now, we always advise caution in using that why question, because it can really trigger quite a defensive response from people. And because what the why question does, it gets you into the area of reasons, of course, which is more getting into the beliefs and values area. Now, as an alternative that works even better, and you'll see how this fits in with some of the models that we've shared already. If you can ask something like, you know, what was your purpose in doing that, that's still the why question, but it's not the why question. Or if you say something like, you know, can I just ask, what was the outcome you were looking to achieve in doing that? It's still the why question. However, it's much better than the why question because it implies purpose and outcome. Because, you know, sometimes if you can link people's behavior to some kind of outcome, then it gets them thinking in those terms as well. So, yeah, that's, you know, that they are really good alternatives, you know, for what purpose and what was the outcome you were looking for to the why question. You don't get that, you know, you can feel it probably yourself. If I was to say to you, well, why did you do that? You know, you kind of feel that instinctive response. You tighten up when you hear that. Most people do. Simon.
As I find mute. Yeah, I was going to say I've definitely been trying to be less of a dog and more of a cat in some situations. External meetings really, where, you know, my default as an 8 out of 10 dog is to very much sort of wriggle in my seat, turn my head to the side, and sort of try and build cozy rapport with people, even those who I'm there to try and influence their views. I mean, the easiest thing I found is sort of grounding through sort of sitting level in the seat and feet on the floor. That's a simple one. Turning hands face down is still just really odd. I cannot do that. It just feels really strange. But and I catch myself, you know, in meetings still reverting to the love-seeking, rapport-building behaviors of a dog. But it's, you know, practice, and over time it's useful to have that you know, tool in the toolbox in those meetings.
Well done for giving it a go and keeping giving it a go until you get more comfortable with flexing between the two, because it's not one or t'other. Thank you, Simon. Okay, I think I can't see any hands up.
Yeah.
So we'll move on.
We'll move on, yeah.
And was the next one we're looking at? I'm waiting for the slides to come up because
yeah, just a little bit on the 360, I think. Rita.
Okay, so what we're going to share here, obviously, we all had our calls, like we said, and I trust you all found them useful, and you have now got your full report. And online, we're inviting you to think even further about them. I think in general, we had, there was a lot of reassurance for some people in terms of the feedback and their matching in some instances to their self-assessment. And then just a few things to spark wonder, curiosity as to where did that come from? What might that be about? What could I do differently? And that's the whole point, gaining insights for you to choose what you want to do with those insights in terms of putting them into practice. What we thought we'd share is the comparison. Well, we're going to share the big picture across this group, this cohort. What did the self-assessment averages look like compared to the averages of all the respondees? And we'll look at a comparison with previous cohorts as well, just to give you some sort of benchmarking there with lots of averaging. So Kevin will just share those.
So the first one we have here is the comparison between the self-assessment of this group, which is the blue line, and the respondent average, which is the red line. So you can see that the lines basically are very close together. and with the self-assessment being ever so slightly lower than the respondent average. This is fairly typical amongst the people on this particular program. We always find a strong relationship between those two lines, and as some of you found in your individual ones, if there is a difference between the two lines, it tends that the self-assessment is the lower of the two. Yeah, that's it. Interestingly, working together, the self-assessment was slightly higher than the respondent average. Not sure what to read into that. They're very close anyway. Okay, and the next one is, so what we've done here, and these are the respondents figures here. The current program is this line here, the orange one, and the darker line is the average of previous programs. Now, there ain't much of a message here to say that that you as a group are pretty much exactly on a par with however many groups that we've run in the past, which is, I don't know,
8 or
15,
9.
16. Yeah, somewhere around there. So I'd love to tell you that you were an exceptionally high group, but yeah, the good news is that you're on a par with everybody else. I don't know how you're gonna. Any questions around the whole activity? In a moment, we're going to give you a little bit of time just to have a chat with somebody about your thoughts on the 360. But any sort of observations or questions on the process, first of all? No? Okay, all fairly straightforward. So go ahead.
So what we thought we'd do is just give you 8 to 10 minutes, just in pairs, which means I need to set up the rooms as Kevin carries on, and just to share, perhaps focusing on what you're taking out of it. You know, what in terms of your development, I think in all our conversations, we were leading you towards that. Well, what might be the focus of your development as a result of what's happening there?
So we'll have a group of 3, Reet, yeah?
One group, yeah. So
yeah.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Leave Kevin out. Yep.
Do you want to put Kirsty in a group of 3?
Yes. Okay. That's done.
Just thinking in terms of the timing of things.
Okay. Okay, all rooms open, and we'll it will just be 8 to 10 minutes because I didn't make my mind up. And I'll pause this. Okay. So we're not intending running through everything you've shared. That was a bit of prompting for you just to share and have the opportunity to articulate. I trust you found it useful. Just have that few moments chatting to someone rather than listening to us. Yes, maybe, whatever. Okay, so the final activity we did on workshop 2 was eliciting values, career, job, vocation, whatever you called that, what you spend your day doing as a leader, and eliciting the values. We invited you to continue that activity. We were asking that one simple question: what's important to you about your job or career? And then in the activity, the follow-up activity, we invited you to complete a form something like this that shows you listed your value, and then very importantly you started asking yourself and reflecting upon what does that actually mean. We asked very specific questions. When I have that as a 10 out of 10, what will I see? What will I see? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? And what am I saying to myself? The purpose of which is to give it very tangible, meaningful model of what it is like, rather than just the nominalized concept, often a single word that sounds very nice and it feels very warm, but in reality, or in the tangible sense, what is it actually? So certainly from the feedback online and the conversations we've had, this has proved a very valuable values activity, and something that just sheerly by articulating, there were some surprises for people. Some people found it surprising how long it took for them to work through the process and asking themselves that question. It took a while. For other people, there were very striking discoveries about what really was important to them. And with that realization came a delight sometimes, an awareness that hadn't been there before. So we've just got a couple of moments. Does anyone want to add to that? Say anything about their experience on values and the usefulness of it for themselves and for themselves as a leader? Was that Kirsty?
Kirsty.
Go ahead, Kirsty.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty.
I found this so useful. I think what you were saying about trotting out the values without actually considering them as real evidence things in your life was really impactful for me, because I think I'd been operating almost on autopilot with some of these things, and having to evidence them made them real. And it actually changed my idea of what a value is, because the value that came out top for me was something I didn't even realize was a value. I did a lot of digging around to see, well, is this stuff that's important to me actually a value? It wasn't one of the more common ones that was listed on charts and things that I looked at. And so I struggled to think, well, is it a value then? But then as I evidenced it, it was so important to everything I do that I thought, well, it has to be, and it has to be number one. So for me, that really shook the tree and helped to organise a lot of my other values as maybe fitting underneath my main one. And it just came together. But I just said earlier to someone that doing this work took about 2 weeks, and it felt like chucking everything from a room on the floor and looking at it and then thinking, well, where do I put things away again? You know, how do I get back to organised? And yeah, so it was a really worthwhile process for me. I really appreciated doing that. Yeah.
Excellent. And I'm just curious now about all those things that were chucked on the ground and you had to sort of tidy them away. Are they tidy away yet, or is it work in progress, or where are you at on that, Kirsty?
I think a lot of it's there. I think I disposed of some things that I might have thought were my values just because I'd been working in a certain area and I thought, well, I like doing that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's your personal value. You can like something, think something's important, enjoy working somewhere, but that's not necessarily a reflection of your personal value. So it was differentiating the two. Excellent. So I shook the tree. Yes, definitely.
You shook the tree. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Just a couple of observations on that, Kirsty. One is, I think when you do that, what it can do is to help you get rid of the shoulds, because, you know, some paths that we follow, we're following them because of these shoulds that have been kind of instilled. You know, I should do this, I should be this, or whatever. And if we can release those, and we're getting closer to that alignment again. The other thing I wanted to say was, it was fantastic to hear you speaking with such congruence. You know, when you were talking about going through this process, I could tell that you were absolutely on course with it. So that was great to hear. And there was a third thing I was going to say, which might come to me in a moment, which we'll come back to.
Very good. Okay. Was there anyone else who wanted to add? Are you ready to move on?
Oh, yes, I remembered what it was. Thank you. Yeah, Kirsty, and group, the simple answer to is something a value or not is it important to you? If it's important to you, it's a value. Okay, so we are going to move on now. And one of the key things that we've wanted to do on the programme is to help you raise your self-awareness of how you operate. And as a byproduct of that, you'll also understand other people better, which is absolutely crucial for your leadership role. Now, one of the things that we've emphasized is get to know your teams and get to know their values. What we're going to start to share with you now is another aspect of those people who you are working with. If you get to know these things as well, the combination of the values and these other things is a real winning formula. So we're just going to start to introduce you to these other things today, and kind of trickle them in throughout the rest of the program.
Can I just, one little thing, I'm going to be putting something on chat that you're going to refer to later. Please don't get distracted by it now. We'll tell you when to read it. Thank you. Okay.
So, all right, let me ask you this question. If you're all looking at the screen at the moment, what have we got here? What have we got, do you think, here? Just open up your
glass of water.
A glass of what, sorry?
Water.
Did somebody say vodka?
Shot of vodka, yeah.
No, water. I said.
Anybody else? What does this bring to mind?
Glass half full or half empty?
Is it a vase? Is it a vase? It looks like a vase.
It's actually a glass, but yeah, it does look a bit like a vase.
Glass.
Okay, so glass half full, half empty. Now, I'm guessing that we have all got some understanding on what that metaphor means. Yeah. Somebody give me another interpretation of that. What do we actually mean when we're saying that?
Optimist or pessimist?
Yeah, optimist, pessimist. Yeah, okay. Now, what's interesting is if you have ever made that observation about somebody, you're kind of making two levels of observation. One is the specific, which is you're either labeling somebody as an optimist or a pessimist. Yeah. But the other observation that you're making is that people's behavior falls into patterns. Does that make sense for everyone? You're kind of acknowledging the facts that, you're not just saying, generally speaking, you're not just saying you're being an optimist at this moment in time or a pessimist. You're saying generally the inference is that you're always a pessimist or you're always an optimist. Does that make sense? So we're kind of acknowledging the fact that people's behavior is falling into these patterns, and these patterns we call metaprogrammes. Has anybody heard of that particular term before? Might be new to you. Okay, so these particular patterns are called metaprogrammes, and they generally follow the format of somebody is kind of way over this side, or they're way over that side, but they might be somewhere in the middle. Now, cats and dogs is not really one of these meta programs. However, it's very similar in that what we're saying is that people have a default pattern, which might be way over here of dog or way over here as cat. And because they are practicing these behaviors frequently, they almost kind of become ingrained. Is this making sense to everyone so far? Yeah. So it's these particular patterns that we're going to explore today. Optimist, pessimist isn't one of them, interestingly, but it's still one of these behavioral patterns that people fall into. Anything you want to add at this stage, Reed, before we get them doing a little?
No, I think just briefing people for the activity so you can tell them more.
Okay, so we are going to get you to do a little activity now in sort of 8 to 10 minutes, and what we want you to do is this. There's only going to be time to do this one way today, so somebody volunteered to be coach and somebody volunteered to be the coachee, and if you are the person being coached, as it were, what we want you to do first of all is just to pick one of your values. It could be your number one, but it doesn't really matter. So, let's say my number one value was respect. Yeah. Now, what the coach then does is ask the question, what's important to you about respect? And then writes that down, which let's call that ABC is their answer. Then what the coach does is to say, okay, so what's important to you about ABC? And then let's call their response XYZ. And then finally, the coach says, what's important to you about XYZ? So what you're doing is you're drilling down from one of their values and gaining 3 other statements about it. All right, that's part 1. That should probably take you, let's say, 6 minutes, 6-7 minutes. And the final one, and you could swap around at this point because this is very quick. Ask the question, how do you know you've done a good job? And write down their answer. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's clear to everyone. Speak out now if you have any questions, if it's not clear.
Okay. So we've popped the 2 activities in the chat as well, which I hope you'll still be able to activate if you need to. And I'm opening up the rooms now so we can get you back quickly. You're going to have to, someone, Shelley. Let's see who I've put Shelley with. Okay. Let's see. So Shelley's going to be on her own. So Simon. So if we move Simon to join Kirsty, that should work, I think. Is everyone in a room? To joined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pausing video?
Yeah. He is. He is. I have every faith in him.
It's always our challenge, Laura.
To get through 17 minutes.
And it's such a fabulous thing he's sharing in 17 minutes as well. It's probably going to be less than that, isn't it, by the time everyone gets in?
Yeah.
So we don't need anyone to share anything back at this stage. They've got reference that they can share with each other at some point. Welcome back, everyone. We are recording again. And hopefully you did your ABCs, XYZs. And Laura's joined us again. And, oh, where has everyone else disappeared to? Yep. Making the most of their moments. Thank you. That looks like, is
Fabulous.
everyone back?
Pretty much, I
Pretty much.
think we might have lost one or two, but yeah. Okay, so we need to crack on. Okay, so thank you for doing that. You'll see how what you've just done there fits in, and will help you maybe answer where are you on these particular scales. So just quickly remembering that these particular patterns, it's a spectrum, and we're going to start to introduce you to some of them. The first one of which we think is really important. So in sharing this with you today, it will really help you to understand yourself and help you to understand other people. And when I first came across this one, it was one of those real aha moments that I was thinking, oh gosh, wow, this has real meaning for me, and I need to think about, you know, what are the implications for this. So let me share screen. So this is predominantly about motivation. So this is about how you or somebody else is motivated. And I'm going to take you through an example here. And just in this example, and this example is purely that, but it's one that most people can relate to because it's about money and time. So we're going to look at two people, person A, first of all. Now, in relation to money, and this could be income or financial standing or whatever it might be, but in relation to money, person A is very, very clear on what they don't want. So in their mind, and it's important to stress this is where this lives, in their mind, they are very clear that there is a red dotted line below which they do not want to fall because of the consequences of doing that. Now, if we run this on a little bit, what happens if person A is getting closer to the line is that they become aware of it, they start to experience some feelings about it, and that then translates into some kind of motivation to take some massive action. So let's just say that their massive action is successful for the sake of this example. Then it can then take them away from this red line under which they do not want to drop, right? Now, when they get to this particular point, what happens to their motivation is that it can tail off. You know, I'm nowhere near this dreaded point that I'm fixed on. So, you know, they'll focus on something else. What can then happen, of course, because they've sort of taken their eye off the ball, is they can start to go towards this particular line again, experience some feelings, that turns into motivation, and that turns into action. And let's say again that the action is successful. Not always the case, of course. So what we can see over time is the person who is very clear on what they don't want is kind of following this pattern of bumping along above the line. And this is what we call an away from pattern or an away from motivation. Now let's contrast that with not person B, person T. You guess where this is going now. Similar start point here, but the difference in mindset is that person T knows what they want. So if we're talking about money here, they have some kind of idea in mind of where they want to get to. I don't know what that bleeping is. Can anybody else hear that? Somebody's mic open.
Maybe Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah. All right. So they're very clear on where they want to get to. Now, when they reach a particular point here, what they often do is they will set themselves an outcome in terms of what they want. And because they're not there yet, their motivation will be high because they want to get to this particular point. So they take massive action. And again, let's say that their massive action is successful. Now, what can happen here? We usually ask this in terms of open questions to you, but we haven't time today. So I'm filling in all the answers. Their motivation, because they've reached this particular point, could tail off, of course. But what tends to happen with somebody who is very outcome focused is they'll recalibrate. In other words, they'll set themselves another outcome. And because they're not at this other outcome, they have motivation, they take massive action, and they get to that point. And then over time, what we find is that the individual is following a very different path. And this is what we call a towards pattern. And this is one of these examples of what we call a metaprogramme, where somebody is running, and remember, these are running in our unconscious. It's not until you come across something like this often that you begin to become consciously aware of the patterns that you are running. So somebody who is running this away from pattern might be asking themselves, you know, if it's about money, why have I never got any money? I always seem to be, you know, just kind of have enough or scraping along or whatever they would say. Well, maybe it's because they have this, they are running this away from pattern, and the towards pattern is very different. Now, I just want to add in one more thing about this, and let me just ask you a question. If I give you a very simple task now, can you do it?
I can.
All right. Now, some of you are nodding to say, yes, we can. Others are, I'm sure, are saying, well, it depends what the task is. Okay, so here's the task. Don't think of a pink elephant. Now, notice what happens when you hear those words. That immediately what happens is you start to think of a pink elephant, even if it's only for a fraction of a second. Now, this is to do with the way the brain works and the way the brain processes information, because the brain cannot process a negative directly. So as soon as I say to you, not pink elephant, you think about pink elephant. Hopefully this is making sense. Can I see some nods that you're all taking this on board? Great. Okay. You know, similarly, if I say to you, you know, don't think about things that hold liquid, particularly don't think about the glass, you see where your attention goes. Now, this is a really important aspect of this towards and away from pattern that we were just talking about there, because the reason that this away from pattern can be so powerful is that if we are focusing on the things that we don't want in life or at work, if we are focusing on the things that we don't want, the paradox is we're being drawn towards them. I'll say that again, and this is one of the most important parts of the program. If you don't listen to anything else, listen to this bit. If you are focusing on the things that you don't want as a person, as an organization, or whatever it might be, the paradox is that you're being drawn towards them. It's almost like it's a mental rehearsal. If you're feeding your brain all the time, you know, I don't want to be poor, I don't want to fail, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that, That's what the brain is hearing, but it's not hearing the don't. In the same way in which, you know, if you say to a child, you know, don't fall down, the child's focus becomes on falling down. So it makes falling down more likely. Now, in terms of this pattern then, firstly, it's good to know which side of that equation you're on. Are you running more of a towards pattern in your life, or are you running more of an away from pattern? That's a great question to ask. And the little activity that you did a few moments ago with a partner might give you some clue if you were the one being done to, as to which pattern you are running. If you look at the three responses to that question about, you know, what's important to you about your number one value, if you look at the three responses, you might see that they are written in a very towards manner, or that they're written in a very away from manner. It might be a mixture, but that might give you a clue as to which particular pattern you're running. So what we would like you to do over the next few days and weeks is to give that some thought, and to think about, you know, become consciously aware, catch yourself. What are you running most of? Is it that towards the things that you want? Are you focusing on those, or is it the things that you don't want? And if you are doing the things that you don't want, how much are you being actually drawn towards those and attracting those things into your life? It's a really powerful, what's the word I'm looking for, Ray? It's a powerful thing to know.
It's incredibly useful to know, and it's got some very, very strong impacts, and particularly in our experience within the third sector, because some of the behavioural patterns, people who are in abusive relationships, it helps go some way, as has been fed back to us, to explaining the dynamics of what's going on for some people some of the time, when they don't actually, in that example, someone in an abusive relationship says, all I don't want another of these relationships. I don't want someone who does that to me. I don't want. And what we find is, as in coaching that we do it as well, is that when you say to the person, what do you want? There's a silence. They haven't actually been able to articulate, comprehend, imagine, model what the alternative is. So their focus and their attention is on that they don't want, and thereby that paradox can play out. So it's an incredibly, incredibly powerful principle, and very useful to understand. We're not, in the longer term, we suggest that it's useful for the majority of people to be more towards inclined if they want to achieve outcomes that they have set for themselves in the long term. In the short term, there's huge benefits in both. You know, short term, you don't want someone who's towards, you want to get away from fire, you want quick action. If you're away from and you're getting closer to it, the motivation's very strong. If I want to get out of this job, I might jump quickly into another. It can be a very quick response from the away from. The towards may be a more considered, but that pattern that Kevin displayed there is a more upward trajectory, whereas the away from has a tendency to loop and in a downward trajectory, so not so useful. What we've done, sorry, Kevin.
I just want to add something else in that's important, and this is about you in a leadership role. So we've said about the importance of getting to know your people. This is about motivation. You will have people who you are managing and leading who are running both patterns. You may be applying the wrong lever to motivate them. So if you have somebody who is very towards focused, offering them incentives and the gaining of something, the carrot, if you will work very well. But if you are leading and managing individuals who are running this away from pattern a lot, that won't work. What will work for them is making them aware of the consequences if they don't do something. Yeah. So that's more of the stick, as it were, to use that metaphor. So again, develop your awareness of which of these particular patterns that those individuals you are working with are running.
Very good. So it's a great subject. If there's any pressing questions, I mean, we'll hang on afterwards if you've got any pressing questions. What we have done, though, in a module that we'll upload, what we will make available to you is an introduction. More detail on this one. We've got a quick walkthrough. You can go through and understand more about that. And the second question we asked you in your activity is in relation to internal and external referencing. And as you work through the things we put on the module, everything will become clear to you on that one too. That was a nice trailer for you getting on with your online, wasn't it? So given that the time is coming to the end, thank you very much for sharing time with us. We have always so much we want to share with you, and we also want to make sure we give you the chance to share back with us. So that's the management of time. But I trust you found it useful being with us here today. What we're meeting again in person on the 1st of May. In the meantime, please put some attention, focus and energy onto the online, where you'll be prompted. Already up there is the 360 review prompt. We have another module going up that will introduce a bit more about the model we'll be using for strategic development on the workshop. So really good prelim that, you know, getting ready for our, so you'll get the most out of the workshop if you have an underlying understanding of that as well. You've also got buddies you can keep in contact with, and I understand that there's a few bits of report writing and strategic work going on, and a few emails need to respond to, and all the other stuff that people have shared with us. You're all quite busy at the moment. I appreciate that. Is there anything else?
On workshop 2, we also have a guest speaker who is an existing CEO who is coming along to share their journey and to be available for you to ask questions. We don't know who that is yet, but it's always kind of one of the highlights of the program. You know, you hearing at first hand somebody who is at a place that you may be aspiring to. So
excellent. So on that, would you like to unmute and say any good wishes to the rest of the cohort? And Kevin and I will say thank you very much. Looking forward to engaging with you online and seeing you on the 1st of May.
1st of May.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey,
See you in May.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, anyone staying for questions? No? Kirsty,
I'll see you on
Friday.
Friday.
Excellent. Okay.